Greetings, fellow Gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru.
I'm Mass Slasher.
And he's Mass Slasher, and today we're going to talk about In a Violent Nature by writer-director Christopher Nash, who I don't think has written and directed anything other than shorts before this, but he was the on-set creature effects supervisor on Psycho Goreman.
Movie about hunky boys.
So you know that this movie is going to have some pretty cool effects, and it does. But the real selling point for this movie isn't even the effects. This is a slasher movie, but it's a slasher movie done in a way I've never seen before. It's a slasher movie where we're following the slasher killer, but unlike something like, say, Maniac, where we get deep into the psychology of like one person's psychosis, this movie's more like we're watching a Friday the 13th film, but we're watching the slasher killer walk to each kill the entire time.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how much setup there is in that kind of thing. This movie goes right into it.
Absolutely.
A lot of walking.
Basically slasher ASMR. There's a lot of quiet walking through the forest.
Yeah, well, very untapped market here on the YouTube.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny because even though there's like brutal as fuck murders in this movie, like this killer, he pulls no punches. If you're in his path, you're fucking dead, and you're dead and brutalized. But even though that happens in this movie, it's kind of relaxing and therapeutic just to watch the slasher killer walk through the forest and stalk these people and try to get his goddamn mother's necklace back.
Yeah, it really goes into like, it's like fishing, right? It's not when you catch the fish, it's the activity in and of itself. Very relaxing.
Absolutely.
You know, if you get to slash a teenager, well, that's just extra good day.
Absolutely, absolutely. It also goes into the slasher trope of mommy issues.
Hey now.
I know, it's a really deep and personal issue for you.
It is a deep and personal issue, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't kind of true.
Deep inside every slasher, there is a mommy who didn't love him enough. Or a mommy that loved them too much.
I didn't mean to drop that. No, mommy. No. Wait, where was I? Oh yeah, In a Violent Nature. This is a good movie.
This is a really good movie. It's not going to be for everyone because there's a whole lot of walking. It's kind of like Jerry if Jerry had a slasher kill every 10 minutes.
As opposed to just the one?
Yeah, all in a quest because some dumb ass fucking teenagers stole his mom's necklace, which was the only thing keeping him inside his grave. So when we say this is like watching a Friday the 13th film, this is like one of the later ones where Jason's already been killed.
This guy starts out as a zombie, so everyone knows that's like the 5th or 6th movie.
And in some of the conversations that he observes, the characters reference other killing sprees this guy went on. So it really is like we're in the middle of one of his sequels.
Yeah.
There's some really fucked up and memorable kills throughout this movie. One in particular we'll talk about in the spoiler section that involves a lesbian doing yoga.
Sometimes the killing takes a while.
It does, yeah.
Sometimes you're like, no, that didn't happen as fast as I wanted. Well, better keep at it because, like, it takes work.
You gotta prep. You gotta set it up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Know the area.
Absolutely, absolutely. You gotta lure the teens out. Mm-hmm. But you also gotta get out of the way so they can't see you, so it looks like you come out of nowhere, right?
Exactly. How many times you watch, like, a Jason movie and you miss the part where he does the Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep.
And, like, the kids are like, oh, what's that over there? All just so he can run around the house and just be like, I was here the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta like take your time to set up the haunted house for the other victims, right?
Exactly. You know, Michael was great at that.
Oh yeah, he was the master.
He was the master.
This guy takes more after Jason than Michael, but there's a little Michael in him.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Much like Jason, when you do get little moments of like his personality, it is kind of interesting watching him like turn back into like a little kid for a brief moment, right?
Well, I mean, like we're all little kids inside.
Yeah.
Murderous little kids.
Murderous little psychopaths.
Well, you know, that's between me and my doctor.
Fair. In a Violent Nature is currently in theaters, and it will be hitting Shudder. I highly recommend you check it out when you get the chance. This is a slasher movie unlike any you've ever seen. It's brutal, it's interesting, and unlike some movies, like say, like Skinamarink, I feel like the experimentation they did here actually does enhance the movie a lot.
Yeah.
Like this would not be as interesting a movie if it was a straight up slasher just following the teenagers. What makes this movie truly worth watching is the way it follows the killer himself. And with that said, my fellow Gorehounds, let us move on to the spoiler section. There's not actually too much to spoil about this movie. The main things that we can really talk about are we can spoil some of the kills for you, and we can spoil how this movie ends. So some of the kills in this movie, my favorite is definitely the yoga kill. There is a lesbian yoga teenager who I refer to as that because the two character traits we know about her is that she is a lesbian and that she likes to do yoga in the woods.
Yeah, like a good batch of slasher movie victims. You really know them by like one or two character traits.
And what I like about this scene is it establishes that this slasher killer does one of my favorite things that slasher killers do. They kill based on the theme of the person they're killing.
Yes.
They're not just killing people willy-nilly. They're killing people in a way that's kind of poetic for them to die. So in this instance, the yoga character has to get killed by being folded in on herself. But the way he does this is fucking amazing. Puts a hole through her stomach and then hooks her head on the other side and then pulls her head through the hole with a hook and chain.
Yeah, you know, like, look, all that walking, you start to get a little creative. You're like, yo, how am I gonna do this one? You don't always know. You're walking for an hour and you're like, all right, how am I gonna do this one?
Yep.
And I'll just hit you.
That's probably the most brutal and visceral kill, but probably the most like agonizingly long kill is the sheriff, who has a history with this guy. He put him in the dirt once before, and his dad put him in the dirt before that.
Yeah. So those are like the two other movies you didn't see.
Yeah.
You know?
So this is personal for him. He lets this guy suffer. He severs his spine so he's paralyzed, drags him into a shed, and then puts him through a wood chipper. But one of those like those wood saws, not a wood chipper.
Yeah, wood splitter.
Like a wood
log
splitter.
Yeah.
Puts him through a log splitter. But the thing is that you watch every agonizing second of this without a single cut. But what makes it so amazing is that because they do it in one shot, you can't see the seam between the fake body and his real body. Because 1 second he's sitting there laying on the ground and you can see him breathing. He's clearly the actor. And then you see him put into the fucking like splitter and there was no cut.
There were two cuts. They cut off his head.
Yes.
And
his
they
arm.
cut off his arm.
Yup, most likely some sort of vengeance for whatever the hell this cop did to him before, I imagine. Because this killer doesn't talk, we don't necessarily get all the insights into everything he's doing.
Yeah.
But we do get really beautiful moments, like when he's sitting down and playing with that little toy car he finds, and he suddenly turns into a little kid. That's a great moment. That's a great, like, humanizing moment for our killer, because, you know, slashers aren't all just pure monsters.
No, that's a Jason putting his mom's head on the altar kind of moment.
Exactly. It's pretty beautiful. Those are probably the two best kills in the movie. There are other kills that are pretty good, but most of them are kind of like, you know, throwing an axe at someone who's running and that kind of shit. One person gets their fucking head smashed, and that's a glorious scene. That's another one of those scenes where I'm like, I don't know where the cut was, but that was great. That's the thing about this movie. All the kills are these like long extended scenes, and because of that, you're constantly playing the game of like, okay, when did they swap out that person's head with the fucking melon that explodes? Like, when did they do it? I don't know, but I'd be curious to watch a breakdown of how they did some of these kills.
Oh yeah, I'm sure a making of would be fascinating.
Oh, absolutely, because this is such a unique approach to this kind of movie. I would love to see all the behind the scenes tricks they did to pull it off. There's another really great scene where he uses a car horn to lure some teenagers out, and you get to watch him like actually like put the stub in the fucking truck to press on the horn and like walk around the house so it looks like he comes from the completely opposite direction when they come running out.
Now that's another thing I kind of appreciated. For example, poor Jason, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone assumes that because he's malformed in the head that he's like slow.
Yeah.
No, he's just ugly.
Yep.
Just ugly. And they say the same thing about this guy. Oh, this guy was slow. But then you're watching him and you're like, no, he's pretty sharp. He's on it.
And so I guess the last spoiler I can really give is to talk about the ending of this movie. So at a certain point in the final act of this movie, we switch from following the killer to following the final girl as she's trying to get away from him after all her friends are dead. And before she runs away from him, she watches her last friend get fucking murdered trying to distract him. And she sets the gasoline that they were going to use to trap him, basically says, fuck this, I'm done, and sets it down and sets the necklace down with the gasoline and runs off into the woods. Has a weird psychedelic like run through the woods because it's pitch dark, she can't see anything, so she's fucking losing her mind. Eventually stumbles across a car, and the person in the car takes her in the car and tries to drive her to like a hospital. We get like this like 15-minute sequence of the lady in the car telling a story about a time that her husband encountered a wild bear. And it's very obvious that in the context of this movie, the bear is a metaphor for the movie. Essentially, what it's saying is what we've essentially watched throughout this movie is a nature documentary, but instead of following like an animal, we're following a slasher killer. Mm-hmm. So it's like one of those like quiet documentaries where there's no voiceovers and you're just watching tigers like walk through the woods and like stalk a gazelle or some shit, except the gazelle in this case are teenagers. And I get what the movie was saying with this scene, but my one complaint with this movie is this scene I feel like goes 5 minutes too long, and it could have been trimmed down just a little bit because I got the point of the story about halfway through and then the story kept going. But that's a minor complaint in the grand scheme of this movie, because overall this movie's really fucking good.
Yeah, and of course, like, here's the one thing, and this is actually a hidden staple of a lot of slasher movies, particularly with one where the slasher is very focused on one thing.
Yeah.
Which is they never do the one thing that you're obviously supposed to do.
Yes.
Why? They're stupid teenagers. Yeah. That's why.
Absolutely.
So the whole time it's like, oh, you took the necklace. And then they're like, well, let's just give it back to him. Oh, that would never work.
Are you sure? Have you tried?
I'm pretty sure that'll work.
And so that leads to the final ending of this movie, which reveals that she has gotten away, though in her mind, she's always going to have the trauma that she's like there's a killer around every corner. But she has gotten away, and the killer has returned to his grave and has taken the necklace that was left behind with him. So it kind of ends on a bit of an anticlimax there. Like she's in the car constantly worried that the killer's going to pop out of the woods.
No last boo.
Yeah, and you have this really long story going on, so you're waiting for the point in the story where it's going to get interrupted, but it never does. She completes her story, and the main character looks off into the woods, and then we find out by going back to the slasher killer that, you know, he took the necklace and went home. He got what he wanted, his mom's necklace. That was the whole goal. That was the whole reason for everything. Now, I do not mind the anti-climax. I actually thought it was a nice, like, subversion of expectations. Mm-hmm. My only problem with it is I wish it wasn't preceded by that overly long story. I wish the story was cut down a little bit so the anticlimax comes a little sooner, because I feel like making that story go a little bit longer makes it feel like you really want more of like a real climax.
Right, like, yeah, you're looking for like the end of Friday the 13th or Carrie or something.
Like him popping out of the woods and grabbing her or some shit. And I understand why they didn't do that. They were subverting expectations. And I also understand what the point of the story was. I just feel like it would have worked a little better if the story was just slightly shorter. That's it.
No, minor complaint overall.
Yeah, it's a minor complaint. Overall, the movie really works. I do think the portions of the movie where you follow the killer are stronger than the ones where you follow the victim, but they aren't bad. They're not bad. It's much more interesting to watch the killer.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's why you came to saw the movie in the first place.
Absolutely. And also, because we're following the killer, it makes it work that all the teenagers except for one are all kind of assholes.
Well, one's named Troy. You know that guy's gotta go. But you can't do him first. See, that's the unspoken rule.
Yeah.
The guy with the obvious, obnoxious, preppy name, you can't do him first.
Yeah.
Because he's not done being an asshole.
Yep.
You gotta let the asshole reach his full asshole-tuity.
Yes.
Otherwise, it just doesn't pay off.
Yep. This movie's also like subtly set in the 80s. Like they never really draw too much attention to it. They just kind of let it be. But they're also doing it because it's just easier to not have the teenagers have cell phones. In a Violent Nature, like I said, it was in theaters and it's going to be on Shudder soon, so you'll have plenty of opportunities to check it out if you have Shudder or if it's still playing near you, so give it a shot. I enjoyed this movie. Where can they find you, Mass Slasher?
You'll find me wherever you least expect me. But you can find Count Jackula every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 p.m. streaming, and I'll be screaming about whatever the fuck he screams about. And on Tuesday and Thursday, he's on that Twitch screaming about whatever he's screaming about. The guy yells a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
What about you? What do you do?
Y'all know me. I'm the Horror Guru. You can find me at the Horror Guru on Twitter, on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook. Just look up the Horror Guru or Blood Splattered Cinema, and I'll be there. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And if you'd like to help out either of us more directly, be sure to check out our Patreon pages. And remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way. And by either of us, I mean me and Count Jackula. Mass Slasher doesn't have his own Patreon page because Mass Slasher lives off the souls of the dead.
Yes.
you know, it's what he do.
Yeah, yeah.
If you made it this far into the video, then I want you to comment below, and be sure to comment below using the hashtag #SlasherASMR.
Dreidel, 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 I made you out of death.
Slasher ASMR, where you get tingles, but it's down your spine. And with that said, my fellow gorehounds, peace out, and we'll catch y'all later.